Today I'll be showing you how I animated a 2D character over some live action footage, also known as compositing. Compositing is when separate visuals are combined into one single image. 1988's Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a good example of a film that featured compositing animation. The process consisted of drawing characters over black and white printouts of the live action footage. However, the evolution of technology has allowed me to form my own process. So before starting my project, I decided to make a storyboard. Although it was a basic storyboard, it got the point across on what I wanted to make. I also made a small diagram explaining how I wanted it to look. Basically, there'd be a character infinitely hopping between the cartoon world and the real world. These were initially going to be portals on the ground, but I changed it to boxes because it would be easier to make. What came after this was getting the compositing footage. This was definitely the hardest segment because we had to get the timing perfect. I set up the scene in my back garden, first positioning the camera, aligning the boxes, and placing the dog. Since the plan was that the cat was going to jump out the box, look at the dog, get freaked out by the dog, and then jump into the other box, we needed a way to open the boxes without ourselves being visible. The way we got around this was using tape. So the plan was that I would open my box, which the cat would jump out of, then I'd throw a dog treat behind the camera so that the dog would look where the cat would be, and then after a slight delay my sister would open her box, which the cat would finally jump into. Each of these aspects would add up to make the cat appear to be in the actual live action footage. Another little detail is that I placed bricks inside the boxes to prevent them from moving. A lot of the attempts were messed up by either the dog moving, or the wind blowing open some of the boxes. This took around 20 minutes to get accurate, but once I got all the timings right, I could move on to the next stage. So for the compositing segment of the animation, before I could animate over the live action footage, I decided to trim down the video and speed it up in some areas. This was to make sure that the timings were more accurate and there would be less frames to animate. I opened the video into Flash and started to animate the cat. I used a mix of pose to pose and straight ahead animation, and then fixed some errors along the way. I spent extra time making sure that the animation looked bouncy with the use of the onion skin. I erased some areas of the cat where objects in the compositing footage would overlap. And then once I was satisfied, I could move on to the cartoon aspect of the video. First of all, I traced over the background using the compositing footage. Initially I was going to make this in Photoshop, but I decided to use Flash because I would benefit if the background was a vector. And like the way I animated over the compositing footage, I started with the body, and then the head, and then I animated the legs, then I animated the tail, and then the ears, and then finally the shadow. As planned in the storyboard, I wanted there to be a smooth rotation transition between the two animations, so to achieve this I went into Adobe Premiere and animated some motion keyframes. I also designed a blue beam effect in Photoshop to make the transition look more stylistic. I created my own sound effects by tapping on grass and cardboard too, and then once this was done, I was finished with the project. The overall production time for the project took around 6 days to complete, with animating being 5 and editing being 1. Because this was a looping animation, I had to make sure that the end could meet up with the start without there being any noticeable cut. Small details such as the cat peeking out the box before jumping out, as well as shaking off its fur after it being stood on end, makes the animation appear to loop forever without there being any noticeable cut. And for audio, fading the background ambience track into an earlier part of the track makes it completely obscure. It was a very fun experience and I definitely learned a lot from this project. I hope you enjoyed viewing the making of this video and perhaps learned something new about compositing.